Good morning. I hope everybody is doing well. God bless you all. I am Pastor Wes Clark from Laurel Baptist Church in West Columbia, South Carolina, South Congaree. So we are continuing on our study of the Ten Commandments. And we are going to begin again with what we always start with. This is to have an understanding of that. This is the second table here. Thou shalt not bear false witness against your neighbor. So we're going over the ninth commandment. This is from Exodus 20, verse 16. And remember that the second table deals with the love of neighbor, loving your neighbor as yourself. One of those is that you are not to bear false witness against them. So the question then becomes, how should we understand this from a New Testament perspective? How did they understand the Old Testament, and so on and so forth? We are going to talk about how we understand it morally. From the natural law, we find that man is made in the image of God, according to Genesis 1:27. And God is someone who cannot lie. So Numbers 23:19, Titus 1, verse 2, Hebrews 6:18 tells us that God cannot lie, and therefore it is incumbent upon us to reflect who our Maker is. And so from a natural law perspective, when we think about bearing false witness, it is something that is not like God. Therefore, it is against the likeness of God, and it violates the very image of God. We're giving a false understanding of God when we bear false witness. The Old Testament understanding of this is that it isn't just bearing false witness in a legal sense. So we find in Exodus 23, 1 through 3, it is people who pervert justice. It is people who do things like take bribes, anything that would lead people astray in a particular way to undercut justice and to pervert justice in any way. That would be bearing false witness. Also in Leviticus 19:11, loving your neighbor as yourself. Part of that is not bearing false witness, and that is defined as lying. So in the Old Testament understanding, we find that it is, again, just like all of these other commandments, it is a vast array of things that are deceptive. So even if you were telling somebody something like the truth in terms of speaking factually, but you mislead people in what those things actually would mean, this would be a form of bearing false witness, and therefore you would come under judgment for that. Now, in the New Testament understanding of this, Jesus, of course, speaks of this as part of the law that he came to not abolish but to fulfill in Matthew 19:18. Romans 13:9 through 10, although it doesn't list this specific commandment when Paul is listing the commandments about fulfilling the law of love, it does say any of the other commandments as well. So this obviously would be included in that. And obviously the biggest event in the New Testament regarding lying was found in Acts 5, 1 through 11. If you know the story of Ananias and Sapphira, there was a group of people who had decided to sell their possessions, their houses, their lands, and so on, and they had vowed to give those possessions to the apostles and to the church. And so it turns out that Ananias decided to keep back some of that money from what he had sold from his property, and he had told the church that he was actually giving everything. It says that his wife Sapphira knew that he was doing this, and so Ananias came before Peter, and he said that he had given everything, but ultimately he had lied. And Peter says, "You have not lied to man, but you have lied to God." Because again, the idea of us being made in the image of God, Jesus speaks about this in Matthew 25, "That which you've done to these, you have done to me also." And so he says, "You've not lied to man, you've lied to God," and he drops dead there. Sapphira comes in later on. She does not know what has happened to her husband, and again, he asks about the property and the money, and she lies again, and so the same fate befalls her. She falls down dead, and the church and the people who heard about it fear greatly because of the power of God. And so lying is a very serious matter. So in terms of application, how do we apply dealing with liars? From a natural law perspective, what we find in Deuteronomy 19, 16 through 21, is that the liar is to receive whatever they sought to do to their victims. So if you lied about somebody committing a particular crime, then you are to undergo the judgment of whatever that crime that they had been accused of. And I think that's appropriate. I think that that's something that we're lacking, again, in our legal system currently. And I think this also goes for the church. If you sought to have somebody removed from the congregation and you lied, you ought to be removed from the congregation. Honesty, again, not lying, is actually part of our sanctification. Being somebody after the image of God means that we ought to keep our vessels holy in the way that Paul talks about this. And I do this when I go over this passage. I focus strongly on the sexual immorality part of it. In 1 Thessalonians 4, 3 through 8, we find that the will of God is our sanctification, our holiness. And although we do focus a lot on the part of not committing fornication, not being in sexual immorality, it also says not to defraud our brothers and sisters in any matter that we have. I think it's a sad thing when people talk like we shouldn't be in business with people who are our fellow church members or with fellow Christians because it could cause problems. It ought not to cause problems. Part of our sanctification is being honest with each other in our business dealings, and so that is a form of our sanctification. And so it behooves us to be honest before the Lord and with our brothers and sisters in Christ and everybody else that we meet. And lastly, we find that liars will undergo a grave judgment. It often talks about them being put to death in various places, and what that doesn't mean in a legal sense. In Proverbs 19:5, when it talks about that they will be judged, it's talking about God dealing with them in some way as he sees fit later on. Liars are referred to as the children of Satan in John 8:44, according to the words of Christ, that Satan was a liar from the beginning, and those who lie are his children. So it is a serious thing to lie. It is a serious thing to bear false witness against your neighbor, against your brothers and sisters in Christ, against other people that you would meet out in the community. And remember, when you're lying to somebody, you are lying to God as well. You are lying before the Lord. He is present in those dealings, particularly for those who are in the church. Please fear God and love the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and body, and love your neighbor as yourself. So remember, be honest and love each other, and God willing, I will see you this Sunday.